Hey, I'm Peter.
I'm Harold and Roland when I'm in the band, and we're the Hallelujah Picassos.
The Hallelujah Picassos were active from 1988 to 1996. Started out as a garage punk band called the Rattlesnakes, playing at grungy venues that John Baker got us gigs at, and developed our sound once we got into more reggae, dancehall, hip-hop, and decided we could play all of those songs at once, which confused some people and excited a lot of people, and made a lot of music. All four of us wrote songs and all four of us sang, so we produced 2 cassettes, an EP, an album, another EP, and then we broke up.
Yeah, that last, although, I always think that last album we did, I always considered that an album as well, because it was an album type song.
Yeah, I mean, it was...
Yeah. And same with Taxi Driver, I consider those albums as well. So it depends on who you talk to. To me, in my mind, I feel like I've done 4 albums. Personally, that's me.
It's also the length of albums.
Yeah, it's also the length as well.
I mean, the first thing we released was Taxi Driver, and that had 14 songs on it, which is an album. And The Gospel of the DNA Demon, that had 7 songs on it, plus some bonus tracks, and that was about, what, 40, 50 minutes worth of music?
Yeah. So I saw it as an album as well, absolutely. So, the other thing is, at the time we were doing all that stuff, it also was a bit of a punk and hardcore element to it. I said, and the element was more attitude-wise and sometimes sounds, I guess. But I found those things were important as well to add to the list of genres. And if these days I get asked what kind of music you play, I shut up. I said, how do you describe music this day? It's like.
It's like when we had a lot of people used to use a lot of hyphens when they used to talk about our music. It's like punk, thrash, reggae, ska, hip hop, funk, soul, thrash, whatever, and we just called it Picasso Core because that was easier.
It's easier.
It's. I mean, the other name that people had for it was crossover at the time, and it's all mashing up genres, which it's now like people do that with computers these days. We did it with instruments.
Yeah.
In terms of the band, we wound up in about 1996. I left the band for spiritual reasons in end of '95. And we'd been working together for 8 years, pretty much non-stop then. And there was always a lot of creative tension in the band, which is why we produced lots of music. And it sort of got to a point where we weren't being that creative, but there was still quite a lot of tension. And I sort of left the band, and then they changed the lineup, which you can probably talk a bit about.
In the beginning it sounded like a good idea. And then towards the end, personally myself, I got disillusioned, and I left the band as well. Afterwards, you think, God, we just should have had a break with all the guys instead of breaking up, If we wouldn't have broken up, we would have been now on the same level as She Had, if not even bigger, But that's just in hindsight,
Unlike She Had, we would have written hit singles.
The reason for this retrospective was I always felt there was something unfinished, and especially I personally felt that we... without sounding immodest, I did feel that we were contribute to the New Zealand music scene. Also because people tell you things, about yourself. So I can step aside the band and say, I agree. So having this retrospective out is showing people who've never heard us, for instance, there were people who were doing things, interesting things and different things a long time ago. And when we started it, Peter contacted all these people who were in the same mind, and those are the liner notes you read about in the album.
Yeah, I mean, one thing with the liner notes was it was kind of important to us that we didn't write our own history because we're not in a position to do that.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of it. We couldn't really judge it, but we got people like Simon Gregg and friends of ours from back in the day, like Renee Jones and other people who've written about what it meant to them in terms of giving it some context.
Yeah.
I mean, what Simon Gregg wrote about us is really interesting because he was involved in the dance scene, like the Brat and a lot of the clubs that we used to go to and listen to new music.
Yeah. But he also, Simon Gregg has mentioned that he was part also of the punk scene, the Propeller, so getting those great write-ups is, is great. It surprised me because I haven't seen him for all these years. Yeah, I mean, same with the write-up of Nick D. I thought that was quite sweet, and actually what he wrote about, I've forgotten all about it. I remember it now. But it brings,
I mean, it's been fascinating seeing some of the stories that sort of come out with the retrospective and what's come out, just because it's the main reason I really wanted to do it is because this is like a big part of my life, and it's basically that music's been deleted for 20 years. Most of it's been out of circulation, and there's a lot of New Zealand music that's just disappeared in the last 20 years, like DLT's album, The Truth School. You can't buy that anymore, and that's one of the greatest New Zealand albums ever. And it's kind of like just, it's basically trying to reclaim what's ours and get it out there so that, maybe some new kids can discover it and sort of, hopefully it still sounds fresh.
But because people have this thing, New Zealand history, but we have especially music history. There's a lot of immediate music history, and there were a lot of bands. I remember, even in the 80s, tons of bands, forgotten bands that when I just arrived in New Zealand, Pneumatics were big. Who remember them, or Beat Rhythm Sessions? But they were all very important bands, I found, So this album is just part of a bigger picture, contributing to New Zealand music history. The artwork is done by Martin Iemond, who I met in a comic store, and it turns out to be that as we got talking, the comic store was, it doesn't exist anymore, but I was a fan of his Extant Man, and you were talking, he was a fan of the Picassos. It must have been either the first album, after the first album. So that's when we met, and we've been ever friends ever since. So he ended up doing the artwork for portraits of us. And
that was on the Drinking with Judas album in '93.
Yeah, '93. And then he also later did Smoking and Fuming, which is also in there, cover, and that's in Gospel of the Judas, the Gospel of the DNA Demon. But the thing, the reason why I say we used them first, and it was on Wildside, and then later, I walk into Wellington in a coffee shop, and one of the guys from She had said, "Oh, I wish that we would have used Martin Iemond first." And of course, a year later they did use Martin Iemond, But it's interesting how people, what hurts sometimes, that people, not say what it's stealing, but take something, you discovered it, and I have a genuine relationship with Martin until he, committed suicide. I have a genuine relationship because I really like the guy, whereas other people just liked him because of who he was. He later went on to do stuff with Glenn Danzig and Veronica. I'm pleased that we have this. At least.
The thing I remember about Martin was that there was one gig I think we played in Wellington.
Oh yeah, he sang with us.
I was sort of looking around, and I looked around. We're doing Picasso Core, and I thought, hang on, Harold sounds different. I looked around, and Harold had jumped off stage and given the mic to Martin Iemond, and Martin Iemond knew all the words to Picasso Core and sang the entire thing. And he always put the mic down, then stage dived, and that was that.
He was
awesome.
That was one of his first experiences with being on stage.
He started his own band.
But he felt that as a comic artist, he didn't get that recognition a pop star got, and he always found it fascinating. And that's one of the reasons why the band. But but Martin Iemond, has said that contributed to our album. Great New Zealand artist, I just wanted to mention that. I think it's important.
Thanks for watching the Hallelujah Picassos on Cheese on Toast. Out October 31st. Buy one for you, one for your mum, one for your sister, one for your brother. Please.
Do that. And then you might have the joy of when we release something in another year's time or something like that.